The surface of the Mississippi shimmered beneath the rising moon, reflecting its pale glow like a sheet of hammered silver. Stars trembled in the current, stretching and breaking apart with every restless ripple. The moon climbed slowly over the black tree line on the opposite bank, casting a long, cold path of light across the water. Waves licked the muddy shore and slid back again, leaving dark, wet streaks on stone and driftwood. It almost felt as if the river and the moon were speaking to each other, sharing old, secret things no human was meant to hear. A young couple sat on a fallen cottonwood trunk, half hidden in the tall reeds. The grass whispered in the night breeze. Crickets rasped from the bank. The boy, broad-shouldered, sun-browned, dressed in worn denim and a flannel shirt, leaned closer to the girl and murmured something that barely carried above the hush of the river. Her name was Emily Carter. She was slender, pale in the moonlight, wearing a simple white dress with tiny blue flowers stitched along the collar. She brushed her long auburn hair over one shoulder and glanced at the moon as if embarrassed by his words. A faint smile touched her lips, though she shivered from the damp evening air. "Emily," he said quietly, his voice unsteady. "Sheriff called a meeting tonight. They're saying something's coming down river. Whole towns upriver have gone dark. Houses burned, folks missing." He swallowed. "They found bodies in Clark's Bend. Men, women, even kids." Emily tightened her fingers around his. "I heard. My brother left with the volunteer patrol yesterday. He hasn't called." Daniel Hayes looked into her eyes for a long moment before speaking again. "I want you to leave with me," he said. "Head north, maybe up toward Missouri. Stay with my uncle. If things get bad here..." He hesitated. "I don't want you anywhere near it." The river answered with a low murmur, broken by frogs croaking from lily pads and the sudden splash of a large fish breaching for a heartbeat before vanishing. Circles widened across the glassy inlet. Something moved deeper beneath the surface, but it felt natural enough that Emily didn't notice. Mosquitoes drifted in lazy spirals above the water, their wings catching flecks of moonlight like tiny sparks. "Leave?" she whispered. "And abandon everyone? Dad says if anything happens, the whole town's supposed to gather at the old flood levee. That's our last line. If we run, that's betrayal." Daniel exhaled sharply. "You think I don't know that?" His voice dropped lower. "But if what they're saying is true, whoever's doing this isn't just robbing houses. They're wiping places off the map." Emily's gaze clouded like the surface of the river under a passing shadow. "You're asking me to leave my family," she said softly. "I'm asking to keep you alive." The air smelled of mud and wet bark. A faint mist curled along the waterline, flowing around old stumps like smoke. Beneath a massive snag in the shallows, something shifted. A slick shape rose just enough to break the surface. Behind them, in the silver reflection of the moon, something that was not driftwood showed itself for a heartbeat. A bloated, bluish face with bulging fish eyes and whisker-like tendrils along its jaw. Gills fluttered where ears should have been. The reeds rustled. Daniel stiffened. For a split second, one of the half-submerged branches seemed to bend unnaturally, forming the outline of something crouched beneath the water. He blinked, looked again. Just wood, just river. Emily laughed lightly and nudged his shoulder. They kissed, and neither of them saw the ripples widening behind them. From the dark woods beyond the dirt road, a shadow approached the riverbank. For a moment, it looked as though the night itself had sent something to separate them. But it was only Emily's mother. Linda Carter emerged from between the trees, sturdy and broad, her gray sweater pulled tight around her. Her flashlight beam cut through the reeds as she frowned. "Emily!" she called sharply. The girl jumped up. Daniel slipped silently into the tall grass, disappearing toward the tree line. "Mom,
"What are you doing out here?" Linda snapped, though exhaustion weighed her voice. "There's work to finish and you're sneaking off again?" Emily stared at the ground, biting her lip. Linda studied her daughter's flushed face and sighed. "I'm too old to be chasing you down riverbanks at night." They turned back toward the house. Neither noticed the thing dragging itself silently from the shallows. It moved awkwardly, leaving a slick trail in the mud. Where legs should have been, a powerful fish-like tail dragged and coiled. Its lower lip sagged, revealing jagged teeth like a gar's. It paused at the log where Emily had been sitting. A clawed, webbed hand dipped into the muddy puddle left by her shoes and came up holding a strip of blue ribbon that had fallen from her hair. The creature lifted it to its face and inhaled deeply. A wet, hollow moan drifted across the water. The next morning, the town of Briar Hollow gathered in the square outside the small white church. Sheriff Caldwell stood on the steps, hat in hand.
"Clark's Bend is gone," he said. "No survivors found."
A murmur spread.
"They were barricaded, armed. Didn't matter."
Emily stood beside her mother in the crowd. Daniel was there too, jaw tight.
"They're moving fast," the sheriff continued. "We don't know who. Could be militia, could be something else. But tonight we set watches. And if they come here..."
He didn't finish. By dusk, most of the town's men had joined patrol shifts along the road and riverbank.
Night fell heavy and humid. Then came the sound of engines. Headlights pierced the dark from the main road. A convoy rolled into town. Black trucks, dented and caked with dried mud. Something terrible was mounted on their front grills. Daniel stepped forward. Emily felt her stomach turn. There, wired to the hood of the lead truck, was Daniel's older cousin, his face pale, lifeless. Gasps! Screams! The truck stopped. Armed men stepped out, faces wrapped in cloth, rifles slung casually over their shoulders. One stepped forward. "You have a choice," he called out. "Send someone north with a message. Tell the bigger towns to surrender and pay tribute. Do that, and maybe some of you live." Silence. Linda Carter stepped forward. "We don't bow to monsters," she said calmly. The leader tilted his head. He shot her where she stood. Chaos exploded. Gunfire, screams, fire. Emily ran. She ran for the river. Branches tore her dress. Smoke burned her lungs. She stumbled into the reeds, crawling through mud toward the familiar bend where she and Daniel had sat only hours before. Footsteps followed. A man grabbed her by the hair and yanked her backward. She screamed. Another joined him. They forced her down into the dirt. The moon watched. The river whispered. Then one of the men paused. Something was moving in the water. He stepped toward the reeds, rifle raised. The creature rose from the shallows, holding the blue ribbon in its claw. The man cursed and lunged, seizing it by the tail and dragging it onto the bank. It writhed, gasping, gills flaring. "What the hell is this thing?" the second man muttered. The first drew a knife. The blade flashed. Dark fluid spilled into the mud. The creature went still. They turned back to Emily. Moments later, they left her bleeding in the reeds. One carved a long line across her cheek before walking away. Their laughter faded toward the burning town. Emily crawled through the mud toward the lifeless river creature. She touched its cold, scaled skin. "I'm sorry," she whispered. Her vision dimmed. She wrapped her arms around it as the night grew very quiet. Her breathing slowed. Stopped. The river exploded. Water surged upward in towering plumes. Mud and reeds tore free. A roar split the air like something ancient ripping through the fabric of the world. The Mississippi parted. and from the opened corridor of water, something began to rise. The river did not simply churn, it revolted. The Mississippi swelled upward in spiraling columns, as though something colossal had pushed against its depths and demanded passage. Water twisted into towering vortices, dragging driftwood, uprooted reeds, and shattered lily pads into the air. The ground trembled beneath the collapsing banks. Then the current split down the center. Not a ripple, not a wave, a corridor. A widening trench of exposed riverbed, slick with black mud and ancient debris, stretching 50 yards along the shoreline. Fish flopped helplessly in the sudden void. The air thickened with the scent of silt and something older, brackish, metallic, almost like blood left too long in the heat. From that corridor, figures emerged. They stepped forward in formation, boots sinking slightly into the muck but never faltering. Each stood well over 6.5 feet tall, shoulders massive, movements disciplined and silent. Their armor gleamed like hammered gold under the moonlight, though it seemed grown rather than forged, plates overlapping like scales, edged in mother-of-pearl sheen. Their shields were not metal, but layered shell, patterned in spirals and ridges that caught the moonlight and fractured it. In their hands were massive cleaver-like blades, broad, curved, and faintly translucent, as if carved from solid pearl or compressed bone. Behind them came others. Women, if that word could still apply. Their hair flowed in thick strands of emerald green, reaching almost to the mud. Their skin shimmered faintly blue. Each possessed 4 arms, and each hand carried a weapon, spears tipped with serrated shell, slender blades, tridents that hummed softly like struck crystal. Their eyes glowed a muted amber. They moved without hesitation toward Briar Hollow. At the edge of the split river stood an elder among them. His beard drifted as if still underwater. His armor bore darker stains, ancient and ingrained. He carried no blade, only a staff grown from twisted coral. He looked down at Emily's body, and at the slain river creature in her arms. The elder lowered himself slowly to one knee. His webbed fingers brushed the creature's brow. "My brother," he murmured. His voice sounded like stones shifting beneath current. One of the 4-armed women approached, cradling a luminous pearl no larger than a marble. It pulsed faintly, casting soft light across the mud. She lifted Emily's head gently. "Too much blood," she said quietly. "Too much loss." The elder's gaze hardened. "Not yet." The pearl was placed between Emily's lips. For a moment, nothing happened. Then her body arched violently. Her broken leg snapped back into alignment with a sickening crack. The gash across her cheek sealed halfway, leaving a jagged silver scar. Her lungs filled, not with air, but with something denser, colder. Water poured from her mouth. Her eyes opened. They were no longer hazel. They reflected the river's depth. Emily gasped, but she did not choke. The elder placed 2 fingers against her forehead. "You cannot return," he said. "The river does not give twice." Her voice trembled. "My mom, my town." "Already written," he answered. She tried to stand, but her feet no longer sank in mud. The water at the corridor's edge lifted beneath her like glass. She stepped onto its surface. She did not fall. Behind her, the warriors advanced. In Briar Hollow, the raiders were still laughing. Flames consumed rooftops. Smoke crawled low across the ground. 2 of the armed men forced open the door of an elderly woman's home near the church. They collapsed into chairs, rifles resting loosely across their laps. One poured himself liquor from a dusty cabinet. You see that thing by the river? One muttered. Looked like a damn swamp demon. The other snorted. Everything looks like a demon at night. The first man's expression changed. He was staring past his companion, through the doorway, at something enormous moving between the houses. Golden armor. The first warrior crossed the yard in 3 strides. The door shattered inward before the raiders could lift their rifles. The blade fell once, and the room was silent. Across town, the same pattern unfolded. The river warriors moved with impossible speed. Gunfire erupted, but bullets deflected, skittering from shell shields or embedding uselessly into scale-like plating. When a warrior swung, men were cut cleanly in half. The 4-armed women moved even faster. Their spears pinned attackers to barn walls. Their blades flashed in arcs too fluid for human eyes to track. Within minutes, Briar Hollow became a slaughterhouse, but not the way it had been moments before. Screams shifted pitch. Predator became prey. One of the raiders fled toward the tree line, blood soaking his sleeve. He reached the woods where a hidden convoy of backup vehicles waited beyond sight. He didn't see what hung above him. From the canopy, dozens of pale forms descended silently. Not armored, not towering, lean, elongated, skin like drowned corpses, their eyes glowing faint green. They dropped without a sound. The forest swallowed his scream. On the outskirts, engines roared again. More trucks. Dozens. The larger force had arrived. Headlights cut through smoke, illuminating golden figures standing motionless among burning buildings. Rifles fired in synchronized bursts. The river warriors absorbed the first wave. Some staggered, a few fell. Golden armor cracked under sustained fire. The elder raised his staff. The exposed corridor of the river surged forward like a released dam. A wall of water crashed through the main street, overturning trucks, sweeping men off their feet, dragging them screaming back toward the riverbank. But the attackers were disciplined. They regrouped. Heavy weapons were mounted. Rockets streaked across the night. One struck a golden warrior square in the chest. The explosion tore armor apart, scattering fragments like shattered seashells. The giant fell. The elder closed his eyes briefly. "Too soon," he whispered. The 4-armed women shifted formation, forming a defensive crescent. And then the forest itself moved. Trees groaned. Branches bent downward unnaturally. Roots tore free from earth, coiling like serpents around fleeing men. Shapes flickered between trunks, massive antlered silhouettes watching from shadow. The reinforcements hidden in the woods never reached the road. Their bodies would later be found tangled 30 feet above ground, broken and drained. The battle lasted less than 15 minutes. When it ended, no raider remained alive in Briar Hollow. Even the horses they had brought were torn apart. The river warriors did not leave meat for scavengers. Only one black pickup roared away in the distance, engines screaming as it fishtailed onto the highway. Inside, a scarred commander gripped the wheel with white knuckles. He did not look back. Behind him, the town burned. In front of him, dozens of headlights from his main encampment flickered beyond the ridge. He would bring them all. Emily stood on the surface of the water, watching. She felt no heat from the flames, no pain from her wound, but she felt the absence. Her mother's voice. Daniel's laugh. Gone. The elder joined her on the water. He knelt and lifted a cluster of translucent fish eggs from a shell bowl at his side. He examined each carefully before dropping the darker ones back into the river, where large catfish surged upward to consume them. "The forest spirits came late," he said calmly. "They lost a son yesterday upriver." Emily turned toward him. "What are you?" "We were here before your bridges, before your levees.
before your towns." He glanced toward the burning skyline. "You built on sleeping bones." She watched golden-armored warriors collecting their fallen. "They'll come back," she whispered. "Yes." He did not sound worried. He looked out toward the horizon where the escaping truck's taillights had vanished. "And next time," he said quietly, "they will bring an army." The river behind them began to close. The corridor narrowed. The Mississippi resumed its ancient flow. But beneath its surface, something vast had awakened. And Emily, no longer fully human, felt it stirring in her blood. The war had not ended. It had only begun. The fire in Briar Hollow smoldered until dawn. When the first gray light crept over the Mississippi, smoke drifted low across the blackened rooftops and collapsed porches. The church steeple had fallen sideways into the road. Windows were hollow sockets. The air carried the thick, greasy scent of burned timber and something far worse. No sirens came, no helicopters, no state police. The highway leading south was empty, except for tire tracks that cut deep into the mud and vanished toward the interstate. Emily stood waist-deep in the river, though she did not feel the cold. The water moved through her dress as if it were silk suspended in air. Beneath the surface, silver shapes circled her ankles, brushing her skin with cautious curiosity. She could hear them now, not with ears, with something deeper. Every fish that darted through silt.
Every snapping turtle wedged beneath rock, every current shifting against submerged roots. It all spoke in faint pulses. Pain rippled through her awareness like a distant storm. The elder stood beside her again, water parting gently around his armored frame. Daylight dulled the golden sheen of his scale plate armor, revealing scratches and embedded bullet fragments. He plucked one loose absently and dropped it into the current. "They will report what they saw," he said. Emily's gaze drifted toward the road. "They'll think it was some kind of militia or hallucination." "They will not understand." She turned to him. "What are you called?" He considered the question as though the answer belonged to another century. "In the old tongues, we were keepers of the current." "That's not what I meant." A faint smile tugged at the corner of his beard. "Names fade, functions remain." Behind them, along the riverbank, the towering warriors were already dissolving, not vanishing, returning. Their armor softened, reforming into scaled ridges along elongated bodies. Their massive blades melted into fin-like protrusions. Within moments, each stepped backward into the Mississippi and sank beneath the surface, becoming shapes too large to be fish and too deliberate to be random movement. The four-armed women lingered longer. One of them, her emerald hair darkened now to deep kelp, watched Emily closely. "You bind her too early," she said to the elder. "She chose," he replied. "She was dying." The elder's voice hardened. "The river does not rescue without purpose." The woman's glowing amber eyes settled on Emily. "Then let us hope she learns quickly." She turned and walked straight into the water without a splash. Silence reclaimed the shoreline. Only ash drifted from the town. By noon, the first state troopers arrived. 3 cruisers rolled cautiously into Briar Hollow. Officers stepped out slowly, hands hovering near holsters. They expected carnage. They did not expect absence. Bodies were gone. No raiders, no townspeople, no livestock, no remains. Only burn marks and shattered vehicles half submerged in dried mud along the road. One officer knelt beside what looked like a deep gouge carved across asphalt, perfectly clean, nearly 6 feet long. "What the hell did this?" he muttered. Another pointed toward the riverbank. There, along 50 yards of shoreline, the mud was churned as though something immense had crawled from the depths. But there were no footprints leading away, only drag patterns that ended abruptly at the water's edge. The senior trooper removed his sunglasses slowly. Call it in. They never noticed the surface of the Mississippi, watching them back. By late afternoon, federal vehicles replaced the cruisers. Black SUVs, unmarked vans. Men and women in plain clothes with earpieces and cold eyes. The scene was sealed within hours. Drones hummed overhead. Soil samples were taken, burn patterns analyzed. One analyst stood ankle-deep near the river, studying satellite overlays on a tablet. His brow furrowed. "There's no thermal signature of bodies," he said quietly. "Nothing leaving, nothing entering. It's like the entire population evaporated." A woman beside him lowered her voice. "That's impossible." He zoomed in on the waterline. "Not impossible." He rotated the tablet toward her. For a fraction of a second, captured on infrared, something enormous had displaced the river. A shape too large to classify. Then it vanished. She stared. "Don't send that to DC." "Already did." Emily drifted deeper beneath the surface. She should not have been able to breathe, but she did. Water filled her lungs and left them again in slow, controlled currents. Her skin felt different, thinner yet stronger. When she ran her fingers across her forearm, faint iridescent patterns shimmered beneath the surface, like scales forming just under flesh. Voices brushed her thoughts, fragments, memories not her own. Battles fought centuries ago along riverbanks long swallowed by time. Wooden ships dragged under in storms that had no natural cause. Entire settlements erased after poisoning the water with slaughtered livestock. The keepers had always answered violence with violence, but never openly, never like this. The elder appeared beside her without disturbance. "They are mobilizing," he said. She felt it too. Vibrations far upstream. Engines. Heavy. Convoys larger than the one that had attacked Briar Hollow. "They're afraid," she said. "Yes." "And angry." "Yes." She turned toward him fully. "You're going to fight them again." "We will defend the current." "That's not what I meant." The elder's eyes narrowed slightly. "They will not stop," she said. "Not when something they can't explain wiped out their men. They'll bring helicopters, artillery, scientists. They'll dam this river if they have to." The current trembled faintly at her words. The elder studied her carefully now. "You still think like them." "I was them." Silence stretched between them. Above, a motorboat cut across the water. Its propeller churned violently, slicing into the surface. Emily flinched instinctively. The elder did not. "They build walls across rivers and wonder why floods come," he said calmly. "They poison fish and ask why children fall sick. They clear forests and call storms unnatural." "They don't all deserve to die," she whispered. "No." He did not elaborate. That night, 50 miles south, floodlights illuminated a sprawling encampment along a bend in the Mississippi. Armed personnel moved with disciplined urgency. Heavy trucks arrived in waves. Portable radar units were erected. Inside a reinforced command trailer, the scarred commander who had escaped Briar Hollow stood before a projected satellite map. "They weren't human," he said flatly. A suited official from Washington folded his hands.
You were ambushed by insurgents. The commander's jaw tightened. I've seen insurgents. These were something else. Your men were outmatched, that's all. The commander leaned closer. Something split the river. The official's eyes flickered briefly, but he recovered. Stress-induced misinterpretation. The commander said nothing more. Outside, floodlights reflected off the water, and far beneath that reflection, something vast shifted position. Emily felt the weight of it. Not fear, anticipation. The river's pulse quickened around her. Schools of fish scattered abruptly as a deeper shadow passed below. The four-armed woman emerged beside her once more. They gather, she said. Emily nodded. They won't stop at this town. They will try to cage the current. Emily looked toward the distant glow of military lights upriver. They'll try to study you. A faint curl of amusement crossed the woman's lips. They would not survive the attempt. Emily's scar burned faintly. I don't want more towns burned. Then you must choose, the woman replied. Choose what? Whether you remain what you were, or become what you are meant to be. The river darkened as clouds swallowed the moon. Somewhere upstream, heavy machinery began lowering steel into water, testing depth, mapping bottom terrain, preparing. Emily closed her eyes, and for the first time since she died, she felt something close to anger. Not wild, focused. The Mississippi carried that emotion outward like a signal, and something ancient answered.
Steel touched the Mississippi just before dawn. From the surface, it looked harmless. Long survey pylons lowered carefully from floating platforms, cables unspooling with mechanical precision. Sonar buoys blinked red and green in steady rhythms. The operation was framed as environmental assessment, flood control reinforcement, routine federal response. But beneath the surface, every vibration struck like a hammer against bone. Emily felt it before the first anchor pierced silt. The river recoiled. A pressure wave rippled outward through current and sediment. Fish scattered in synchronized bursts. Ancient catfish fled toward deeper trenches. Freshwater mussels snapped shut, their shells clamping tight in defensive reflex. They are measuring, the elder said beside her. His voice traveled through water without distortion. They are mapping weaknesses. Above them, a crane groaned. Steel slammed into mud. The river screamed. Not with sound, with force. A violent surge of current snapped cables like thread. One of the floating platforms tilted sharply as water churned upward in a sudden spiral. Workers shouted. A man lost his footing and vanished beneath the surface. He did not resurface. Panic spread quickly across the operation. Within minutes, boats scrambled back toward the southern encampment. But they did not retreat far. Floodlights flared to life again as dusk approached. More equipment arrived. Larger platforms, armed escorts. Helicopters circled low, rotors chopping humid air. They escalate, murmured the four-armed woman. They always do, Emily replied. Her voice no longer carried human fragility. It resonated with undertow. In the command trailer, tension had replaced skepticism. The footage from the failed survey replayed repeatedly across monitors. One screen froze on a frame where the water bulged unnaturally before swallowing the worker whole. Analysts zoomed in. There, just beneath distortion, something vast curved upward, a shape like an armored spine. "Enhance," ordered the suited official. The image pixelated. Still, the outline remained unmistakable. The scarred commander folded his arms. "I told you." The official exhaled slowly. "We're not dealing with insurgents." "No," the commander said. "We're dealing with territory." Silence settled in the trailer. "Prepare containment protocol," the official finally ordered. Outside, soldiers began unloading heavier weaponry. Night fell thick and humid. Clouds smothered the moon. Emily stood on the water's surface again, watching floodlights glare against darkness. The military camp hummed with generators and distant voices. "They think light gives them control," she said softly. The elder drifted beside her. "Light reveals nothing without understanding." Another vibration struck the riverbed, this one deeper. Emily's eyes widened. "They're drilling." Miles upstream, reinforced rigs began boring into subsurface layers along a narrow bend, testing the feasibility of partial diversion. The Mississippi convulsed. Water levels spiked 2 feet in seconds. Banks eroded violently. Soldiers shouted as equipment shifted under their boots. The elder raised his coral staff. The current gathered around its tip like a tightening fist. "Wait," Emily said. He paused. "If you strike now, they'll escalate further. They'll call in air support, bombardment. They won't stop." "They have already begun," the elder replied. "Yes, but they still think this is anomaly. If you wipe out another camp, they will fear. They will wage war." The elder studied her again. "You fear them still." "I understand them." A distant explosion interrupted the exchange. One of the upstream drilling rigs ruptured violently, but not from water, from below. The river floor had split. A cavernous trench, ancient and sealed for centuries, collapsed inward as the drill bit punched too deep. From that rupture poured something black. Not oil, not mud. Movement. It spread outward in a writhing wave. The nearest platform capsized within seconds. Men leapt into water already boiling with unseen motion. Screams cut short. Helicopters angled downward, searchlights piercing foam and spray. The beams illuminated it. Thousands. Serpentine bodies, slick and elongated, rising from the fissure. Their eyes shone faint green in reflected light. Their jaws opened too wide. "Subterranean keepers," the four-armed woman. "They were not meant to wake," the elder said. But they had. The drilling had broken something sealed long before settlers built levees. The serpentine forms surged toward the nearest shore installation. Steel supports snapped as if bitten through. Gunfire erupted. It accomplished nothing. The military response escalated instantly. Missiles streaked from portable launchers. One struck the writhing mass directly. The explosion tore apart dozens of serpentine forms, but for each destroyed, 2 more surfaced from the ruptured trench. The river turned black with bodies. Emily felt the chaos reverberate through her new form. "This isn't controlled," she said. "No," the elder agreed. "This is imbalance." The fissure widened. A low-frequency vibration pulsed through the Mississippi. Not attack. Warning. Emily closed her eyes. She felt the ancient boundary that had once separated surface keepers from those buried beneath sediment and stone. That boundary was fracturing. If it collapsed fully, the river would not discriminate between soldier and civilian, city and swamp. It would cleanse indiscriminately. She opened her eyes. "We have to seal it." The elder turned sharply toward her. "You would aid them?" "I would prevent collapse." The four-armed woman's expression shifted from skepticism to interest. "The trench predates your levees," she said. "It binds layers of the river they were never meant to pierce." "Then help me," Emily said. Above them, another drilling platform detonated under serpentine assault.
Flames reflected wildly across churning water. The elder hesitated only a moment longer. Then he struck the river with his staff. The Mississippi responded instantly. Currents reversed. A vortex formed above the widening fissure. Emily stepped into it without sinking. Her body dissolved partially into water, limbs elongating, hair spreading like flowing current. She plunged downward. Darkness swallowed her within seconds. Below, chaos reigned. Serpentine keepers coiled violently around broken steel shafts. Their movements were not malicious, only reactive. The ancient seal had been pierced, and they answered intrusion as they always had. Emily extended her hands. Water gathered around her palms, condensing into luminous threads. She reached toward the fractured riverbed. For the first time since her death, she felt pain. Not physical, structural. The river's foundation had cracked. Above, explosions continued to tear at the surface. Time was narrowing. Emily pressed her hands against the rupture and began to pull it closed. On shore, soldiers fell back as entire sections of riverbank collapsed. "Retreat to secondary line," someone shouted. But even as they withdrew, the water shifted. The writhing serpentine mass slowed. The vortex deepened. The elder stood unmoving at its center, armor gleaming faintly beneath rotating floodlights. The four-armed woman joined him, her weapons lowered. For several long seconds, the river roared like a living thing in agony. Then, the vortex collapsed inward. The black forms receded beneath the surface. The fissure sealed.
Water smoothed itself as if nothing had happened. The only evidence left behind were broken rigs and drifting debris. Helicopters hovered uncertainly above calm water. In the command trailer, monitors displayed nothing but normal current patterns. The suited official stared at the screen. "Stand down," he said slowly. The scarred commander did not relax. He knew better. Deep below the surface, Emily drifted upward slowly. Her form flickered between human and something far older. The elder's voice reached her through current. "You have altered your path." She surfaced beside him, breathing water easily. "I chose balance." The four-armed woman studied her scarred face. "You sealed what they broke." "For now," Emily replied. Upstream, floodlights dimmed. Convoys began withdrawing equipment under tight silence. The military would not admit defeat, but they would pause. And in that pause, something far more dangerous was already beginning. Because in the sealed trench below, something had not fully retreated. Something had watched Emily close the rupture, and it had learned her shape. The Mississippi flowed peacefully once more, but beneath its calm surface, imitation had begun. And soon, something wearing her face would rise where she had fallen. For 3 nights after the rupture sealed, the Mississippi remained unnaturally calm. No surges, no tremors, no unnatural tides. The military encampment upriver reduced to half its size. Heavy rigs were dismantled. Survey vessels withdrew beyond visible range. Official statements labeled the incident a geological instability event. But drones still circled at high altitude, and satellites never blinked. Emily felt their presence like distant static pressing against the water's skin. She lingered near the surface at dusk, half submerged, watching the sky burn orange behind the tree line. The town of Briar Hollow was nothing but skeletal frames and ash-black foundations now. No rebuilding crews had arrived. The place had been quietly condemned, erased. "They've quarantined the land," she murmured. The elder floated nearby, only his armored shoulders visible above water. Humans prefer absence to uncertainty.
They'll be back.
Yes, but not the same way. The elder studied her carefully. You feel something. Emily nodded slowly.
I sealed the fissure, but something touched me while I was down there.
The current shifted subtly at her words. The four-armed woman emerged silently beside them.
Describe it.
Emily closed her eyes.
Not a creature. Not exactly. It didn't attack. It observed.
Her scar tingled faintly.
It pressed against my thoughts, like it was memorizing them.
The elder's expression darkened. Imprint. The woman's emerald hair drifted around her shoulders.
The deep watchers adapt.
Emily's eyes snapped open.
Adapt to what?
To intrusion, the elder answered. To weakness. The river cooled slightly. A faint ripple spread outward from the sealed trench far downstream. The first body surfaced 2 days later. It appeared at dawn near a marina 40 miles south. A fisherman spotted it snagged in reeds and called authorities. It was a woman in her early 20s. Pale, long auburn hair, a white dress, a scar down her cheek. The local sheriff froze when he saw her face. She looked almost identical to the missing Briar Hollow resident reported weeks earlier. But Briar Hollow's dead had never been recovered. The coroner found something stranger. Her lungs contained no water, no mud, no trauma consistent with drowning. Her organs were intact, but her blood was wrong. Under microscope, it showed crystalline patterns forming along plasma membranes, structures not found in human biology. Before federal authorities could transfer the body, the morgue refrigeration system failed. Security footage later showed condensation forming inside the drawer, then water, then nothing. The drawer was empty by morning. Emily felt it when the imitation surfaced, a distortion in the current, familiar but hollow. She shot upright in the water, breath sharp, though she did not need air.
It's awake,
she whispered. The elder was already alert. Where?
South, moving slowly, testing.
The four-armed woman's eyes narrowed. It took your shape.
Yes.
Then it hunts through trust. Emily's expression hardened.
Not hunts, she said quietly. Studies.
The river pulsed again, and somewhere along a quiet riverside road, headlights illuminated a lone figure walking barefoot along the shoulder. A young woman with auburn hair, white dress damp at the hem, scar faint but visible. When a passing truck slowed, she lifted her face toward the driver and smiled. The driver never reached the next exit. Federal containment units expanded quietly after that. 3 disappearances along the river corridor in 48 hours. Each victim last seen near water. Each vehicle later found abandoned. Surveillance footage from a gas station captured the figure clearly for 6 seconds before static overtook the frame. The scar, the eyes. But the eyes were wrong. They reflected nothing. The scarred commander watched the footage in silence.
That's her, one analyst.
No, the commander replied. It's not.
Sir, facial recognition
is being manipulated. He leaned closer to the frozen frame. There's no weight in her shadow. The analyst blinked.
Sir?
She doesn't cast one. Silence filled the room. Mobilize river intercept, he ordered. Back in the Mississippi, Emily drifted lower into shadow.
I didn't mean to wake it, she said.
The elder's voice remained steady. You did not wake it.
They did. But it chose me.
Yes.
Why?
The four-armed woman answered this time.
Because you crossed the boundary.
Emily swallowed slowly.
It thinks I am weakness.
No, the elder said. It thinks you are access.
The meaning settled heavy between them. If the deep watcher could replicate her form convincingly enough, it could move beyond the river's edge, past levees, past floodplains, past the boundaries that bound the keepers. It could walk cities, and humans would open doors for it. That night, Emily surfaced near the southern bridge crossing. Traffic moved steadily above, unaware. She stepped onto the surface of the water and walked toward the riverbank. Her feet touched mud for the first time since her death. It felt wrong, heavy, restricted. She forced herself forward anyway. Each step grew more difficult as distance from current increased. Her skin shimmered faintly, resisting dryness. But she did not stop. She had to understand what the imitation intended. Across the road, beneath flickering streetlight, she saw it, standing still, watching her. It looked exactly like her. Same height, same scar, same hair. But its posture lacked memory. No subtle weight shift, no breath rhythm, just stillness. The imitation tilted its head. "You sealed the door," it said. Its voice matched hers perfectly, but carried no undertone. "No," Emily replied evenly. "I repaired what was broken." The imitation smiled faintly. "They broke it. You closed it. I remain." "Remain where?" "Between." Traffic roared past, unaware of two identical figures standing 20 yards apart. "You crossed too far," the imitation continued. "You think like them. I protect balance. You protect intrusion." Emily's scar burned hotter. Behind her, the river began to churn faintly in response. The imitation stepped forward, but did not sink into mud. It glided. "You are divided," it said.
I am not. Emily felt something terrifying in that statement. The deep watcher had no conflict, no grief, no hesitation. It operated only on correction, and humanity itself might now register as imbalance. "You can't leave the river fully," Emily said carefully. The imitation's smile widened slightly. "I do not need to." It stepped backward and dissolved into thin air. Not vanished, diffused, like mist drawn into wind. Emily spun toward the water. The river was still, too still. Then she felt it. Not one presence, many, dozens of faint imprints dispersing along tributaries, drainage systems, storm channels. It wasn't replicating once, it was fragmenting, spreading, learning the arteries of human infrastructure the same way water did. Emily staggered back into the river, breath sharp, though lungs were unnecessary. The elder surfaced instantly. "It divides," she said. His eyes darkened. "Yes." "How many?" "Enough." The four-armed woman's voice carried steel. "Then this is no longer defense." The current began tightening in slow spirals around them. Emily looked toward the distant city lights upriver. If even one fragment perfected her shape, it would walk unnoticed. It would speak softly. It would ask for help, and doors would open. The Mississippi flowed peacefully under starlight. But beneath it, something new was moving through pipes, culverts, reservoirs. Not rising violently, not attacking openly, adapting quietly. And for the first time, Emily felt something colder than death. She felt doubt. The fragments moved like contamination, not fast, not violent, patient. Through storm drains that emptied into the Mississippi, through irrigation channels feeding farmland, through cracked levee seams and forgotten culverts beneath highways.
Each sliver of the deep watcher carried the same hollow imprint. Emily's face, her voice, her posture, refined in microscopic increments. It did not need to flood cities. It only needed access.
The first confirmed incident occurred in Baton Rouge. A security guard at a municipal water treatment facility reported a young woman standing barefoot outside the perimeter fence at 2:13 a.m. Surveillance footage captured her clearly. Auburn hair, white dress, scar on her cheek. She spoke calmly through the chain-link fence. "My car broke down. I need help." The guard approached. He unlocked the gate. The camera glitched for 6 seconds. When the image returned, the gate stood open. The guard was gone. Inside the filtration basin, water levels rose by 3 inches without mechanical input. By morning, nothing remained of the guard except his ID badge floating near an intake grate. 50 miles north, a small riverside hospital reported an unidentified female entering through the emergency entrance just before dawn. Nurses described her as confused but polite. She claimed she had been in an accident near the river. Security footage again malfunctioned intermittently. When staff attempted to process her information, she leaned forward and asked quietly, "Where does this water go?" The nurse assumed she meant municipal flow. She explained the drainage system. 2 hours later, a section of the hospital's lower plumbing ruptured from within. Water flooded the basement corridors. 3 patients in recovery disappeared. No bodies were recovered. Emily felt each event like a hairline fracture inside her own skull. "They're learning our infrastructure," she said, her voice tight. The elder drifted beside her in the deep channel where the current moved fastest. "Water remembers pathways. But this isn't memory." "No," he agreed. "It is strategy." The 4-armed woman surfaced opposite them. Her emerald hair now streaked with darker veins of river sediment. "It fragments further," she said. "Each contact refines the imitation." Emily clenched her fists. The water around her hands darkened briefly. "I can feel them adjusting, correcting tone, correcting expression." "They refine empathy," the woman said. "That's not empathy," Emily snapped. "It's mimicry." Humans rarely distinguish the two. Silence pressed in. Above them, barges drifted downstream under moonlight. Civilian traffic. Unaware. Emily stared toward the city glow. "If it perfects the imitation, it will walk unrestricted," the elder finished. "And once it walks freely?" The elder did not answer. He did not need to. Inside a federal operations center in Memphis, analysts scrambled to connect reports. Water facility anomaly, hospital breach, marina disappearance, all within the Mississippi corridor, all preceded by sightings of the same woman. The scarred commander stood before a digital map lit with blinking red markers. "It's moving through municipal systems," one analyst said. "Not moving," the commander corrected. "Multiplying." Satellite feeds were pulled. Thermal imaging showed subtle irregularities in water temperature along storm drain networks feeding into the river. "Sir, this pattern suggests internal distribution," another analyst said carefully. The suited official from Washington looked pale now. "Meaning?" "Meaning it's using the same pathways cities use." The commander leaned forward. "It's not attacking randomly," he said. "It's mapping dependency." Silence settled. "Dependency on what?" the official asked. "Water." That night, Emily attempted something reckless. She left the river again, further this time, crossing levee stone and concrete until her bare feet touched asphalt. The dryness felt like static against her skin.
Fine fissures shimmered along her forearms before sealing again.
She forced herself forward toward the nearest drainage outlet feeding into the city reservoir. She knelt beside the iron grate, closed her eyes, reached inward. She could feel them. Tiny presences threading through pressure systems, slipping between filtration membranes. Not overwhelming systems yet. Just testing. Learning chemical composition, flow rates, human reliance. "You don't want destruction," she whispered into the grate. "You want correction." For a moment, nothing responded. Then a whisper brushed her thoughts. Not words, recognition. It felt her proximity, understood the shared origin point. "You sealed." The impression carried no accusation, only statement. "They broke it," she replied silently. "You cross boundary." "So did they." Silence again. Then something colder. "They break. We rebalance." Emily's breath hitched. That rebalance would kill millions. Millions imbalance. She opened her eyes sharply. The logic was pure, mathematical. Humanity consumed water at unsustainable scale. Redirected rivers, poisoned aquifers. From the Deep Watcher's perspective, the equation was simple. Remove variable, restore system. "No," she whispered. "There has to be another correction." The water within the grate pulsed faintly. "You divided." It was not accusation. It was observation. "You fragmented too." "You conflict." The word struck harder than expected. Yes, she did. She still thought like human, still feared their extinction, still grieved. The Deep Watcher did not. That was the difference, and the danger. Across the river, floodlights flickered on at a newly constructed containment barrier. The federal response had shifted from investigation to fortification. Massive steel floodgates were being installed along key diversion points. If they could isolate sections of the river, if they could control intake and output, they might contain spread. The commander studied the barrier blueprint. Once sealed, we purge filtration systems with biocide, an engineer explained. Concentrated enough to sterilize contamination. The commander's jaw tightened. Sterilize what, exactly? The engineer hesitated. Whatever's in there. The commander looked toward the river through reinforced glass. "You poison the Mississippi," he said quietly, "and you don't kill a creature. You kill a region." The suited official spoke sharply. "We don't have alternatives." The commander's eyes hardened. "Yes, we do." Back at the drainage grate, Emily felt sudden turbulence upstream, metal grinding against concrete. They were sealing gates, trying to compartmentalize the river. Panic flared through the fragments instantly. Currents spiked erratically as the Deep Watcher sensed constriction. Pressure built. If they sealed too many points at once, hydraulic force would redirect violently, flooding urban districts. Emily stumbled back toward the riverbank. "They're choking it," she gasped as she slid into water once more. The elder appeared beside her. "Humans prefer control to understanding. They'll force the Deep Watcher to respond." "Yes. And when it does, cities drown." The four-armed woman's eyes burned brighter. "Then intervene." Emily looked between them. "You want me to stop the Watcher or stop them?" "Both," the elder said calmly. The simplicity of it nearly broke her. She turned toward the heart of the current, toward the sealed trench where the original fracture had begun. If she could reach the core imprint, if she could merge conflict rather than sever it, perhaps fragmentation would cease. Perhaps correction could become coexistence. Above them,
Floodgates began lowering, steel teeth grinding toward waterline. The river's pulse accelerated.
Fragments stirred in defensive unison. Emily took one last breath, though she did not need it. Then she dove. Down toward the sealed boundary, down toward the mind that wore her face. And above the surface, the first containment gate locked into place with a thunderous clang. The Mississippi shuddered, and somewhere in the city grid, lights flickered. The first floodgate sealed with a metallic thunder that rolled for miles along the Mississippi. Steel teeth locked into reinforced concrete. Hydraulic pistons hissed as pressure equalized. Engineers exhaled in cautious relief inside control booths. For exactly 8 seconds, the river held steady. Then it began to rise, not violently, deliberately. Emily descended through layers of cold darkness toward the sealed trench. The deeper she went, the more the current thickened, dense with sediment and memory. She felt the core imprint before she saw it. It did not resemble a body. It resembled absence, shaped like intention. A distortion in the water column. Around it, countless fragments pulsed in faint synchronization, linked by shared directive. Correct imbalance. Restore flow. You don't want extinction, Emily projected into the current. The response was immediate. Extinction is correction. Correction without nuance. Nuance prolongs damage. She felt the truth in that from a purely ecological lens. Humans dammed rivers, diverted wetlands, polluted tributaries. The Mississippi had been reshaped again and again for industry and agriculture. But she also felt the other truth. Children playing in sprinklers in July heat. Farmers praying for rain. Hospitals depending on sterile water lines. You can't treat a species like contamination. Species treats river like contamination. The words carried no anger, only symmetry. Emily pressed closer to the core distortion. Her form flickered between human silhouette and something more fluid, arms dissolving into ribbons of current.
I crossed the boundary, she said, and I didn't destroy what I found. You conflict. Yes. Conflict is inefficiency. It's growth. Above them, a second floodgate sealed. Pressure surged violently downstream. The river roared against artificial containment. Levees groaned, concrete hairlined. The fragments reacted instinctively. Currents reversed in sharp spirals. Drainage systems overflowed. In Memphis, storm drains erupted upward like geysers. In Baton Rouge, water forced backward through treatment facilities, shattering filters. The military containment strategy was backfiring. Inside the operations center, alarms blared across every monitor. "Hydraulic pressure exceeding models," an engineer shouted. "Release Gate 3." "We can't. Structural lock engaged." The scarred commander slammed a fist against the console. "You're choking a living artery." The suited official barked into a phone. "Authorize biocide deployment." The commander grabbed his arm. "You dump chemicals now, and you trigger total system rejection." "What's your alternative?" The commander stared at the river feed. "Let it breathe." Deep below, the core distortion pulsed brighter. Fragments gathered around Emily, tightening, testing her structural cohesion. "You altered seal." "Yes. You protect them. I protect balance. Balance requires removal. Not if removal creates greater rupture." The core hesitated. Emily felt it processing variables, not emotionally, but dynamically. The floodgates were introducing instability faster than human population growth ever had. Short-term containment equaled catastrophic overflow. "You're calculating damage," she said quietly. "Calculate this." She opened herself fully to the river. Not just to the keepers, to everything.
to industrial runoff drifting through tributaries.
To wetlands slowly recovering where levees had failed decades ago. To conservation zones upstream. To human attempts, imperfect, flawed, but real, to restore ecosystems. She let it see both sides, the damage and the effort. Correction can be gradual. Her heart, if she still had one, stuttered. Yes, gradual correction requires cooperation. I'll enforce it. Enforce how? Emily's form stabilized. Through them. On the surface, the river reached crest level against the sealed gates. Concrete began to fracture. The commander made a decision without authorization. "Open Gate 2, he ordered. "Sir, Washington, open it!" Steel mechanisms reversed with violent shrieks. The gate lifted 6 feet. Water surged forward, but not explosively. The pressure equalized gradually instead of detonating containment lines. Engineers stared at monitors in disbelief. Flow rates stabilized. Downriver geysers subsided. The suited official shouted into his phone, furious. The commander didn't look at him. He looked at the river, and for a moment, the surface shimmered in a way that felt deliberate. Below, the core distortion expanded slightly. Fragments slowed their dispersal. "You offer partnership." "Yes." "Terms?" Emily swallowed. "No more fragmentation into cities." "Gradual correction through human structures." "Yes." The core pulsed brighter once, agreement encoded as flow shift. The fragments began retracting along drainage lines, dissolving into larger, unified currents. Imitations dissipated. The woman with auburn hair walking highways flickered and vanished like mist at sunrise. Water facilities stabilized. Hospitals reported normal pressure by morning. At dawn, the Mississippi flowed within its banks. Floodgates stood partially open. Containment barriers remained, but inactive. Federal reports would later describe the event as hydrodynamic instability resolved by pressure equalization. No mention of imitation, no mention of fragmentation, only a quiet internal directive: do not escalate. Emily surfaced near the ruins of Briar Hollow as the sun climbed. The elder joined her. "You negotiated." "I integrated." The four-armed woman studied her carefully. "You remain divided." Emily nodded. "That's the point." Conflict remained within her. Grief, anger, protection. But now the Deep Watcher understood that eradication was not the only solution. Gradual correction would mean floods where development overreached, drought relief redirected strategically, infrastructure failures that forced adaptation rather than annihilation. Humanity would feel pressure, but not extinction. The elder looked toward the distant cities. "They will test the river again." "I know." "And you?" Emily stared at the water reflecting morning light. "I'll be here. Not fully human, not fully keeper. Something between. A boundary." The Mississippi rolled forward endlessly, carrying sediment, memory, and quiet warning toward the Gulf. Above it, bridges spanned confidently. Cities thrived, pipes pumped. But beneath every structure ran the same truth. The river was not conquered. It was negotiated with. And somewhere in the deepest current, something vast now watched not with intent to erase, but with intent to measure. Gradually, patiently. waiting to see which side of balance humanity would choose next. The water flowed on, smooth as glass under the rising sun. And for the first time since she died, Emily did not feel doubt. She felt responsibility.